Happy Monday. Today we are talking about natural ways to cope with grief, right? When I suggested this topic for us, we had just gotten, I mean, I feel like it's just like back to back to back to back to back news of, people that we love passing away. It's an eventuality, right? In this world that we live in. Um, but then that was like a month or so ago when we originally planned to talk about this today. But then we had on a corporate level, right, within the world of doTERRA, there was a big layoff that happened. And that also created feelings of grief, right? Just like a really deep sadness for a lot of people. And so that's why, we want to talk about this topic because sometimes we think of grief only as like, oh, I lost someone that I love. I'm super sad, but it can manifest itself in different ways, right, Dr. Ashley?
The doctor was poignant this
Doctor,
morning.
the doctor is in.
Yeah, in a hot mess. I'm in the gym, clearly, about to be. But yeah, I think you're totally right. I think we grieve so many different things in life. We grieve
Mhm.
opportunities lost, opportunities we didn't take. We grieve death. We grieve relationships that maybe didn't work out or didn't manifest the way that you thought they would. Um, we grieve, career changes. We grieve like the loss of money, like all kinds of things. And I
Mhm.
think emotionally, we connect grief to being bad. It's like one of those
Mhm.
emotions like anger and jealousy and like all those that it's like you don't want to talk about feeling, but it's so extremely important to I guess to give voice to those things
Yeah,
and
for sure.
to allow yourself to deal with them because there's so much truth and healing there. And I think there's levels to it. So I am excited to talk about it today. And
Yeah.
Dani, there is an essential life and an essential emotions book right here. So we are good.
Good, good. The doctor is in. Yes. So when you just do a basic Google definition of what grief is, it is deep sorrow, especially when it's caused by someone's death. But again, that deep sorrow can be experienced in so many different ways.
Mhm.
And sometimes we don't even realize that we are grieving something, right? We don't even realize it because it's not the death of someone that we love. So we
Mhm.
don't. I know just personally, like not even considering myself in grief over certain things or certain experiences.
Ooh, I just
So
thought of something.
tell us,
I just
please.
thought, I mean, we grieve bodies, body changing, shifting,
Oh,
like you had a
I
baby,
definitely grieve.
your body don't look like it
Well,
used to. You 40, it don't look like it did when it's 20. You
I'm definitely grieving that, sis. Cause sheesh, over here, 25 was a good
baby.
year.
Hmm.
But
25 was
it's true. I
popping.
mean, it can look like so many different things, and I feel like if we don't, if we don't, if we are not able to attach, this is where I'm at this phase in life. I'm learning this. My amazing mentor and coach, Jenny Ray Oates, is who's really helping me deal with this. But it's if we do not attach the appropriate emotion or feeling to how we feel, then we don't know how to process that and how to heal and how to like move it. So one of the things that Jenny Ray Oates says, she says, you need to, as it relates to your feelings, you need to recognize it. So recognize if you're triggered by something that there's an emotion attached to it. So you recognize it, you name it, right? Okay, I am in grief. I am grieving. I am, irritated or frustrated, whatever the emotion is, you name it and then you move it. Because, doctor, what happens to us if we don't move grief?
Yeah.
If we don't fully process it and hold on to it? Like what happens?
Yeah, it sets up in your body, in an organ, in a system, typically causes pain, can cause disease. That's a plug there for The book Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. Thank you,
Mm,
Veronica. Shout out to Essentials Emotions coach. So I was definitely about to go there because I know you talked about moving it. Sometimes we
yeah.
can't move it alone. It's
Hmm.
a space where you need to enter therapy or some sort of emotional release work. So if that's something you need help with, holler at your girl. That's actually one of my favorite things to do, is to
Mm.
help people identify the root of those of emotions and to set them free because they do have us walking around with these burdens on our shoulders, in our chests, anywhere in the body, just making us sick and uncomfortable.
Yeah, because when you experience, and I don't know if you know the answer to this off the top, but when you experience grief,
Mhm.
chemicals are being released in your body, right? Like these, there are hormones or chemicals that are associated with different feelings and emotions in our body. Yeah,
Mhm.
am I correct?
Yeah, you are. Mhm.
Do you know what it is? The chemical it is that's
It
released
just
when.
depends. It could be serotonin, it could be cortisol. Um, I think it also
When
too
you're.
depends on how stressed your body is at the time, because it
Mm,
could be putting strain
mhm.
on your adrenals and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, grief can produce serotonin?
Well, just your body, the way your body manifests it, or the way you are
Mm,
dealing with it or not dealing with it, like
I
suppressing
see.
or releases all
Okay.
sort of things.
Mm,
Depressing
mm.
is like the absolute worst thing you can do to your mental health, but it's also like the worst thing you can do to your physical health.
Yes, because I think what happens too, and I know we have a variety of people joining us online and on I mean in Zoom and on Insta, but I feel like in particular,
I'll be right
people
back.
of color have a bigger issue with this, right? Where did the doctor go?
I'm here. I went for my book.
Okay, okay. So if I feel like, I mean, I don't know, you tell me, like I feel like our community in particular, and I have a lot of friends who are Hispanic and they say this similar things that, we have just like growing up back in the day. I mean, I feel like it's much better now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jennifer, why do you think that is? I'm going to tell you. I think that, growing up, I grew up in the 70s. My parents grew up, whatever, 20 years from now, like in the 50s, I guess. 70s, 80s for me, 50s, 60s for them. And it was just not a good time in this country for people of color. And I think it almost, the mindset almost is like, you don't have time to be sad. Like, we've just survived. We gotta like pay bills, we gotta figure it out, we don't have time, and that's generational. Like that's, if you go just kind of look at some of the effects of slavery, some of the long-term effects of slavery, that's part of it, that trauma of like, don't nobody care if you're sad, if you're upset, if you just, if your spouse was just murdered in front of you, no one cares, pick the cotton. So there's a lot of that that I feel like is just, it's taught, and it goes on and on and on. It's generational trauma is what that is. And I see today, I see that parents of color, it's different for them today. Now I feel like there's a lot more awareness of mental health and a lot more awareness of like, nah, we're not just struggling to survive anymore, like we want our children to thrive. And I'm sure that it's not just people of color who experience that. Maybe people who of a certain economic station in life probably feel the same way. It's like we barely eating. You can't be sad. You just got to go figure out how we're gonna make ends meet. And I think that has just created a society of people that um, don't know how to deal or process their grief in a healthy way. So we suppress.
Can I also tag in there and say, I think there's also not think, I know and see there's a level of systemic distrust of
Mm,
healthcare and healthcare modalities amongst people of color, just because things historically, like the Tuskegee syphilis study and beyond, where people that were seemingly in this position of influence and power that looked like them put them in positions that ultimately cost people some lives.
Mm,
And so you have people who just don't trust the system in general based upon doesn't matter who what they look like and who the person is providing support to them just because of things that have happened to our ancestors in the past. So there's that. And I think there's also this underlying thing of like what happens in my house stays in my house, for also fear of
mm,
what happens if conversations discussed about things that were going on at home are made public.
mhm,
And I think some of that is a connected to pride, but either
mm,
way it goes, I will definitely say that there is this generation, I would say like above like our parents that were like, you go to therapy, that means you're crazy.
yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
it. Like there's no like wellness factor to that. There's no like, oh, I'm gonna deal with my anxiety and depression. It's like that. And I think, honestly, I think COVID is what broke things up because no
Hmm.
more could people ignore it. Like everybody's locked in at home. You got to start dealing with yourself, right? And it's like when you can't go anywhere, you got to sit still. You have to deal with yourself
Right,
and the people in
right.
your house that you might not have been dealing with. So I feel like COVID allowed us to really be more open to talk about our feelings in therapy
Hmm.
and all of those things. And like grief is right into that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I took a workshop a couple of like last month, and that was one of the things that she talked about. She talked about how um well, I think the statistic is like 90% of our of what we do is subconscious. Like we're not even aware of what is driving us to do the things that we do. And so much of what we're doing is based on unprocessed grief, how we deal with loss as a child and how that then manifests itself in various ways. So I've been doing a lot of work with that, and it's been quite interesting. It's been quite interesting to see how that's manifested itself in my own personal life. For instance, some of you know, I have an older brother, and he and I were really close as kids, but actually have blocked a lot of those memories of how close we were as children. And it was throughout this process of going to this workshop that I realized the emotion associated with the loss of my brother. So he's physically alive, but he's in and out of prison. I haven't seen him probably in maybe 7 or 8 years now.
Mhm.
I haven't seen him, his face. And the emotion is grief. And it never occurred to me that that was the emotion attached to that. And now as I'm have some awareness, I'm able to see like, oh, okay, like this is what that looks like, and this is how I can move through this, right?
Mhm.
But then I also think about people who are dealing with that type of grief, and then those who have also, in addition, have lost someone that they love. Um, and it's just it watching someone go through that process, I think is just so sad. And I think too, one of the things that you just mentioned is how it can have an effect on our bodies. And the one of the strongest organs, hmm, one of the organs that has the biggest impact is the heart,
Mhm.
right? And so I think we think about like brokenhearted and they died of a broken heart and things like that. Well, that's because that's where that grief really can impact us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the main ways, like if we even look in the emotions book, when people talk about having pressure on their chest, tightness in their chest, um, pain in their chest. Grief is one of the top emotions that are responsible for that. And I think the way it comes out, it's like, oh, I'm having this chest pain or pressure for your PCP. The first thing is like, oh, we need to send you to the cardiologist to have a workup and make sure nothing's cardiac. They go,
Mhm.
everything's fine. They come back, they're still having pain pressure in the chest. And like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. We're dealing with some emotions there that we
Yeah.
have to release in order for that to go away. And it's connected with anger,
Mhm.
anxiety, feeling of panic and sadness.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think I appreciate that. Will you consider yourself to be an integrative doctor?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh-huh.
I don't really label myself. I'm just out here. I'm just trying to help people be well and use natural
Yeah, I
tools
hear that.
mostly.
Well, I appreciate that you are open to other modalities,
Yeah.
right? So when Dr. Riggs came to Charlotte and did like a workshop for our people here, he talked about, like, I think he said in Germany the medical system is both both traditional, Western medicine and holistic,
Hmm.
treatment. So they use plants as part of the treatment. So you may go to the doctor and they may prescribe you a drug, and also they may say you need acupuncture, or you need, take this oil or take this herb, right? um but then you have doctors who just refuse, in my opinion, like my experience, they refuse to acknowledge that there's something beyond a synthetic drug that can help you. And I think that's why, as a society, we're as sick as we are for a lot of reasons, because we're not uttering the words diet or exercise or lifestyle. That's not something that a lot of, they're just really quick to put you on a pill, right? And then the other piece of that is how emotions are play a part in that, what stress is doing, to the body. And so I don't know. I think it's just something that we have to talk about. Shiree says in the chat, like, it's compounding and it's
Hmm.
heavy to carry when it's unprocessed. And it's so true. I'm really curious, Dr. Ashley, tell me what an emotional release looks like.
So there's a process, which initially starts with identifying the emotion in and of itself, because it's like it's been said, sometimes you don't even know exactly what it is, because the way we are describing it in our minds is not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily that. Like, so for example, in my first session, the emotion that came up for me was self-sabotage. And I was
Mm,
like, the devil is a lie. Don't sabotage myself. I'm out here working hard and doing all the things. And then we started going through the questions and the release work. It's like you sabotage by hesitation. You
mm,
sabotage by overthinking. You sabotage by putting yourself in this position of pause when you know that God told you to move.
mm.
And so sometimes those emotions don't look like what we think they look
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
and they're
For
really
sure.
there. So the first part of the release work is identifying the emotion. Sometimes people come straight in like, it's this. I know exactly what it is.
Mhm,
Most of the time, there's like conversation around things that I've been feeling as of late, and we get to
mhm,
the root of that. Sometimes people have been called to an essential oil.
mm,
And when we start looking at the emotional root or description of that oil, we're able to find the emotion that is connected to that, calling you to heal,
yeah.
which is really beautiful. It's one of my favorite. I love when that happens. And then the other way we can get to that emotion is through body. So sometimes there's some part of your body that's talking to you, like we mentioned with the chest. Okay, you're feeling something in the chest. Okay, well, let's look at the emotions typically connected to that. Do any of those speak to you? Do any of these oils speak to you? And then we start working through it. So once we identify it, we can ask some questions to make sure that that's really what it is. We'll then connect you to the oil that speaks to you most. And we start, doing some affirmation type of work to speak and release, and then calling in some healing and giving you kind of a piece to carry with you that's anchored in that oil so that you are able to deal with it when it shows up again. So I think one of the
Mhm,
biggest errors we make in emotional healing work is assuming that once I deal with this one time in this session or in therapy, it's not going to hit me again. The goal,
mhm,
though, is that you take the sting out, like you've identified how to manage it, so that maybe it's hitting you at a 10 right now, but the next time it comes up, it's like a 7. And then the next time
right.
it's like a 4. And then eventually it
Mhm,
doesn't bother you at all. We know that that's kind of, we're done with it. But I think that setting realistic expectations about it is we don't want this to impact you the way it has for the last however many years ever again. It will never sting you like that.
Mm,
So it's
okay.
a process. It takes about excuse me, 45 minutes to an hour depending upon what kind of work needs to be done and what release needs to happen. I've had sessions as long as an hour and a half.
Mhm.
But I think it's so extremely important because people physically look different when we're done.
Mm, yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
So it's a series of questions that are
Hmm.
asked and use different oils. So let's talk about then some natural ways that we can help support our bodies in when we're grieving, no matter what it is that we're grieving. We talked about a couple of them. Just making like being able to express it, to talk through it,
Hmm.
not holding it in or suppressing it. Um, what about lifestyle?
Hmm. I think when we're grieving, the natural inclination is to shut down
Right.
or get busy. Because I think people either
Like
like,
overly busy. Like
yes,
overly
we're trying to
busy.
distract
Oh,
ourselves.
hi. That's
Hey, girl,
hello.
hey. Yeah, so we're either like distracting ourselves to not think of what's going on so it doesn't bother us, or we can kind of cocoon into ourselves and just kind of sit in it. Um,
Yeah.
and then depending upon which person you are, what's your tendency, we have to kind of manage that a little bit differently because otherwise we just end up in this place where it's like 5 years later, 3 months, 6 months down the road, you have this explosion over something totally minor that's triggered you and you didn't even realize it was
Hmm.
connected to something. You know,
Hmm.
I've done release work with people who have been holding on to stuff in their 50s from things that they were 10, 11,
Childhood.
12 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
not realize
you
it.
don't even realize, yeah, you don't even
Hmm.
realize the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially like I feel like I've always considered myself to be one who is very like self-aware. It's
Hmm.
the word that I would use to describe myself.
Hmm.
Now I realize I'm very unaware and that one of the emotions coaches is a good friend of mine. And I was talking to her one day and she was like, "Listen, honey," she's got a few years on me, and she's just like, "I see you, you're hiding from something, you don't want to deal with something, and you're just busy, 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 and you need to, at some point, you need to deal with it." She was encouraging me to have a session.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Girl, I don't want to, I ain't ready for it."
And
But
that's real.
it's real. It's like I don't want to. I don't want all to bring all that up. But I had a really good session, when I was at that retreat. And now I feel this pressing desire to slow down,
Hmm.
which is interesting because that's actually not typically who I am. So what you heard from me yesterday was that urge to like, okay, I gotta like pump the brakes. I actually need to like deal with some of these emotions that are coming up. Yeah, it's been awesome. And I've, I think you have to have people in your life that are there. Like I kind of had a conversation with my husband and my family about this process that I'm going through to try to like, take care of little Dani from Little Toot Toot. That's my childhood nickname. The version of me that was broken at an early age, and it was grief, just could not articulate it or put a name to it. Um, and I'm saying things like this, and this is what I would maybe encourage some of you who are just maybe starting this process. I'm saying things like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. I'm feeling a certain way, and then reach out to your resources. Like be
Hmm.
able to identify what it is and then reach out to someone that may be a resource that may be able to help. I'm feeling so we have a lot of people here that are in the doTERRA business with us, right? So maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed. How do I reach out to someone that maybe can help me work through those feelings? Or
Hmm.
as it relates to grief, I'm deeply sad. I'm really, really sad. I'm grieving. let me reach out to a resource to help me process that. So maybe that looks like therapy or emotional work or, whatever that looks like. I know there's a lot of people here who are Bible readers, so like really looking into the scriptures for so much comfort that we can get from the scriptures. Prayer, all these things help us to get it moving. And I think part of getting it moving is acknowledging that it's there,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's acknowledging. So yeah, I love it. So some people like I would imagine like hibernate and like sleep and
Hmm.
want to do nothing, and others do too much. But the reality is, what do you recommend? Like, let's talk about when people like lose someone they love. Obviously, you can't just automatically get back into life because there's things to be done. But
Hmm.
like, do you recommend that they get back into their normal schedule as quickly as possible?
Yeah, my therapist told me something when my father passed away. She said, grief is like a roller coaster.
Mm,
Ride it, allow yourself to feel the ups and downs, and
mm,
just not feel like you have to hold those things in. So I think
yeah.
sometimes for, maybe you have to get into the business after someone passes, right? Like for like when my dad, I was his power of attorney, so I had to ensure like everything was handled. So I was like deeply in the business of making sure all of his end of life things were cared for.
Hmm.
But then in the process of that, what I realized is I wasn't allowing myself to feel, right? I
Mm.
literally spoke at my father's funeral.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I mean, I was souped up on Serenity and Adaptive and all of those things, but
We'll
I
talk about
don't
those oils in a
think,
minute, y'all.
yeah, it probably took me a good maybe 2 to 3 months after he passed to actually fully like release that and
Mm.
actually cry, like ugly
Yeah.
cry. Like I needed that,
Yeah.
but I was so in the business of it. But I think that you have to acknowledge that you are feeling what you're feeling. You have to create the space to deal with it,
Yeah.
because like I said, other times, otherwise it'll creep up on you
Yeah.
and attack people that have no dog in the fight. So
Hmm.
you have to
Or
definitely go ahead. Hmm.
yeah, or it manifests itself, like we said, in your body.
Hmm.
You're emotionally in pain, and then you are also physically in
And pain.
pain
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
not processing it or dealing with it. I
Hmm.
like what Moneta says, acknowledgement, not avoidance. Yeah, we
Yes.
gotta, and it's okay. Like we all deal with it. It's a human thing. So I think that's another thing. We need to be okay with being sad and having days when we're down. I like that illustration of a roller coaster. Like
Hmm.
enjoy the highs when they come, but recognize that the lows could follow, especially when in
Hmm.
a place of grieving the loss of someone. Um, yes, I love it so much. Okay, and then obviously diet and exercise and making sure that I feel like when you're sad and you're grieving, is when you like people bring you like cookies and cakes.
Hmm.
Do you know what
And
I mean? I feel like
yeah,
that's
either,
culture. That's what we
and
do.
I
Let
think
me
we
give
want
you.
do again do one of the two, like you overconsume or you just don't at all.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want anything. Yeah. So having like balance there, I think is gonna also be really helpful. Now, let's talk about some oils that we have personally have experience with. I'd love to hear in the chats if you guys have had experience with a particular essential oil that has helped you. Um, my favorite oils, there are three that I like, and I don't know what's in them, so maybe you can help me with switch
Hmm.
over. My three favorite oils to give someone who's grieving. The first one is console.
Yes,
It is like I mean it feels to me it smells like a hug. I don't
I can
know how
tell
that's
you
possible.
what's in it.
Tell me what's in it. What's in console?
Frankie.
Blend. The king is there. No
Yes,
wonder.
the king and
No
queen.
wonder.
Rose,
Rose is too. Oh, I love it.
patchouli, ylang ylang,
Mm, mm.
amyris, sandalwood, osmanthus, labdanum. I'm not sure what that is, but it's in there.
I'm a
Mm,
fan of osmanthus. My body likes that one.
yeah.
It smells. First of all, it just smells like very comforting. I love, 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 love that oil for
Mhm.
myself. So if I know I'm sad, and I will roll it over my heart, and I'm seeing some oils here, rose and breathe over the heart. Yeah. So I love to rub console over my heart. I love to like just put it in my hands and like take deep breaths. I love it so, so much. It
Have
works so
you
well. Mm.
ever read the emotional description of console?
No, tell me.
I'm about to fix your whole life right now. So,
Fix it.
it says, excuse me, this blend of trees and flowers was formulated to assist individuals who are in need of emotional comfort. It soothes emotional pain after periods of extreme stress or trauma. Console assists individuals who are burdened by loss, grief, or tragedy. When past emotional hurts resurface, console can assist in releasing these emotional burdens. When a storm is raging in one's heart or mind, or when there is no relief from fear, emotional pain, or anxious feelings, console can assist individuals in taking the first steps toward healing. It encourages individuals to seek divine intervention so they may experience the ever present mantle of warmth,
Mm.
love, and consolation. Console helps to heal burdens, assists in experiencing a serene heart and mind, and guides individuals toward emotional rest.
Mm. I love it.
Mhm,
I love every one of those words. And
mhm.
it's such a beautiful oil to gift to
It
people
is.
who are grieving. I have a friend who lost her husband. I've been wanting to get her on, like just interview her on online because her story is so powerful. But her husband was killed in an automobile accident, and it was, obviously tragic and completely blindsided. I mean, it was a lot. And people, I wasn't into the oils at that time. I didn't know about doTERRA at that time, but people had gifted her oils. And she was just like, Give me anything. Just give me anything, right? Like I don't even I just I mean it was so hard to watch her go through this process. And so she would use the console. She would use it, over her heart, on the behind her ears and her pulse points. She would, and she didn't in her head, she did not associate like, oh, I feel better with it. I think it just became a reflex. Let me just
Mhm.
grab this oil. I need something. Um, and so she didn't realize how it was working until one day she had to go to like the courthouse to do something. And this is like maybe a year or so after his loss, and it was something, I don't know, with like his insurance or something like that. And how you have to put your bag through the thing? Okay, what's it called?
Like the
The
security scan thing.
Yes.
Mhm.
So her bag was going through the security thing, and she was going without it. And she was feeling emotional going into this place to do this. And she was like, her body was like, You need the consult. You need the consult. I need the consult." She said she literally had a full on like panic attack there because she's like, I need it. It's not
Mhm.
even that let me just grab it because it's here. It's like her body was like needed that support. And it was a whole thing. I have to have her explain it, but it was so interesting to me that her, our bodies are so intelligent,
Mhm.
right? And and these oils are also quite adaptive, so our bodies knows what chemicals we need from those oils, and it really can be an amazing support. And so after that she was like, oh, this, I am relying on this oil. I need to make sure it's always in stock, right?
Mhm.
So it's a beautiful, now when she sees other people who are grieving, she gifts them that oil as well. It's awesome. I also saw in the chat Rose, the queen of oils, really good for self-love. So rolling that over the heart is really good as well. And then breathe,
Mhm.
right? And I like to do breathe and console together because when you can barely, when you're crying and you're releasing and you can barely like breathe. That's an amazing oil to use. What are your favorites?
So
Also
can
cheer. We'll talk about that in a minute.
cheer. Yeah, that's a good one. The one I always give with console is forgive.
Oh, ooh, tell us
Because
more.
I think a lot of times when we experience
Mm,
loss, especially if it's unexpected, even if it is expected, there's some level of anger.
mm,
Sometimes we're mad at the person, sometimes we're mad at God, sometimes we're mad at the situation, sometimes we're mad at ourselves. And I think forgive allows us to manage that
hmm.
and just call it out.
Yeah,
Because I would even say, like, with when my dad passed, I had some feelings of guilt um,
yeah.
surrounding that. And I also, from myself, like, there was guilt there. I was angry at him. I was angry.
Mm,
Like, I just had a lot of big feelings. And also the time in my life that it was all happening. I was going through a divorce. And then I'm like, really, God, this is
hmm.
what you got
It
for
was a
me in
lot.
2021? Like, and it was the start of the year. Like, hello, like, what?
Mm,
So I think sometimes we don't address that part. We don't address the anger, the judgment that we have, like that feeling of being critical, the resentment. And then I
mm,
also think that loss a lot of times creates this sense of cynicism and
okay.
doubt. So I think we have to like just be real about all of that. There's like blaming and all of that that I think comes up anytime we're dealing with the emotion of grief. So I think we have
Yeah,
to be able to address that.
yeah. I love that. I love that. Um, okay, so let's talk a
Ooh,
little bit about, yeah.
did you see
Are
what
you reading?
Venice just wrote?
If you read it.
Yeah, she says, I like the concept of letting go. There's an element of fear because sustained pain can be comfortable. It is a scary thing to think of moving past pain to healing. You think, oh,
Healing
that
means
like
forgive.
healing means
Yeah.
forgiving. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes.
That's real.
Yes. It's real. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's where I was gonna go next. So, I remember okay, just talk about drama. Okay, guys, just talk about drama. Because you could, but let me just also say you can grieve a relationship. So me and my husband, when we were dating, we broke up. And I didn't realize how much I loved him until he broke up with me. Girl, I was broken down and I could not stop crying. I've never been a big crier. And it's my life, right? And I remember like I was sobbing and I was crying and I couldn't get it together. I couldn't like do anything. And this only went, I mean, God, this was like 24 hours, but still. So I remember, listen, drama. I read an article. I was like, how do I Google? I don't even know if Google was out then, but like, how do I like move like how do you deal with a breakup, I think was what the article was about, but it pulled me to an article about grief. Excuse me. And it said pick, so I'm curious what you guys think about this because it worked for me, but it
Hmm.
said pick pick like an hour or so, pick a time frame in your day and grieve,
Hmm.
let it out, process it, cry, scream, whatever you got to do, and then move on with your day. Do the rest of the things. So I mean, for those 2 days that we were broken up, I would, in the morning on my way to work, I was like, this is my time to grieve the loss of my man. And so I put on this, you'll always think of me now when you hear this song. Um, what's the song? I didn't know nothing. I was stupid. I was foolish. What is that song? Mariah Carey. I would play that song and I would sing, I would cry my little eyes out. I gotta tell him that. I don't think I ever told him that. But anyway,
You know now.
what's that? We belong together. That's it. So I'm curious. I'm curious. I've not lost anyone, in death that has, I mean, lots of people in death, but not like super close, like a parent, like a spouse, like a sibling. Um, So I'm wondering, does that same technique apply? Have have you read that? Have you heard that in therapy?
Yeah, I've definitely read and heard about that as well. I think one of the things that I think that's really good, but I think the only thing I would add to that is also allowing yourself the
Mm.
space to deal with something if it comes up and it's not in that time frame, right? If you're
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I'm free from 2 to 2:30, I'm a,
Right.
go somewhere and scream. But if at noon you're like, I think I need to cry, I need a moment with my door closed in my office or something like that, then
Yeah.
give yourself the grace
Then take
to.
it. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. For sure.
Lots of
For sure.
grace required with grief.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. For me in 2021, I went through a situation that was really probably grief is the word. And it was really tough, but and I was emotionless, right? This is pretty classic Dani Flynn. And but I didn't mm, you couldn't see the emotion. I felt it. I felt heavy. I felt sad, but I also felt like I can't linger here. I must continue on. I must, I was pushing for founders. I was a guy who has time to deal with this. Is probably why I finished founders because I was going through something and it fueled this like cannot stop, must keep going. And one of my favorite, favorite oils. So I would do the Itovi scan, and every time I would scan when I was sad to see like what it would pull up. Every single time it was elevation. That
Mm,
was my oil. And I remember before I had tried the Itovi scan, I went to this retreat and I and left my elevation at home. Elevation, by the way, they don't have anymore, which is so sad. But I
talk about
had
grieving.
I mean, hello. So I went to this retreat and there's all these oily people here. And I'm like, I came in and I was like, yo, I need elevation. I need elevation. I need elevation. I need elevation. In my head, I was saying that. So I'm like, does anybody have elevation? Does anybody have it? And everybody's like, no, I don't have it. So I was really sad that I didn't have elevation, Anyway, I used the Itovi scan that day, and that is the first oil that popped up with elevation. I don't know what's in that thing. Osmanthus is in there, and osmanthus seems to be like I like all the oils that osmanthus is in. Do we know much about osmanthus?
I can
I see
look.
that the people on Instagram
Elevation
liked.
is the oil of joy, by the way.
Yes, it's the joyful blend. Woo, that oil was powerful. Anybody? Oh, Monetta loves osmanthus. Anybody sad because elevation is gone? I pray
Mm.
that one day that it will return.
Osmanthus, the oil of gentleness. It's great
Mm.
for feel these
Interesting.
negative emotions like harsh, feeling harsh, stressed, hurried, distracted, hardened, resistant, over striving, abandoned, and empty.
Dr. Ashley, calling me out, calling me out. Woo, child. No wonder. No wonder I that it
Baby.
resonates. That it's in so
Uh,
osmanthus. I don't think can you buy osmanthus? I don't know if you can. I don't think you can buy it. It was BOGO last month or in April, and they sold out of it. Like they ran
yeah,
out. Literally, like they overcommitted with the osmanthus, and it's in beautiful. I think it's in balance.
I'm gonna send you this when this is over.
Somebody said they have a whole bottle of elevation. Can you send me a sample
Just a
vial, please?
sample vial. A cash app
Just
you for it.
Oh my goodness. All right. Any other before we close things out, any other thoughts, any other things who that come up when it comes to helping to support our bodies um when we're grieving or support ourselves or supporting others?
I I would include peace in
Oh
this
yes.
realm of emotional oils that I love. And I also would definitely recommend you having a person or your friend circle, like your inner circle, to check in on you and make
Mm,
sure you're not hiding and
yeah.
isolating and doing things that are not good for you.
Mhm.
So I would definitely recommend tapping into your inner circle, making sure that they are
Mm,
aware of what you're
yeah,
experiencing and how they need to show up for you to help pull you
for
out.
sure.
I
Grief
literally like
accountability
wrote,
partner.
yeah, I love that.
I love that. And I think too, like when you're on the other side, like maybe it's not your moment to grieve. You're in a good place or a decent place. But you want to support someone else. I think it's, I mean, I know for myself, it's like I don't know what to do. I don't
Hmm.
know. I want to say the right words. I don't know. Um, but if you are the person grieving, being able to articulate that to
Hmm.
someone, check in on me. Make
Hmm.
sure, when all the, usually when someone passes away, there's a lot of, or when something happens, right, that is associated with grief, you have a lot of support in those initial days. But
Hmm.
it's the months and years even after where we could be suffering in silence and
Yeah.
people don't even realize it.
I mean,
So,
to this
you
day, I would say last week there was a moment that I reached for my phone to call my dad. Like that just
oh,
doesn't
wow.
go away. Like, it
Yeah.
may not be
Yeah.
as frequently as right after he first passed, but it can hit you out of the blue. And it could just
Yeah.
be like, or one of his favorite songs played, sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, little things that can come up and like you just got to make sure that you're connected with people who can understand that and are willing to support you in those moments. Mhm.
Yes. Oh, Blanche,
Mhm.
I love you. Send in love that way. Wait, there it is on Insta.
Oh, I didn't. That's fancy. All I'm seeing these
Uh-huh.
damn thumbs
If
up
you're
and
on,
stuff.
I know, Insta has all kinds of special, things. So yeah, so if you're grieving, you know someone who's grieving, no matter what the loss is, reach for your oil, right? What did we say? Console, um, peace,
He
breathe,
forgive, breathe,
forgive,
rose.
frankincense, rose. We had some other ones pop up in the chat that help with like the stress management. So adaptive,
Hmm.
um, balance. Shinrin Yoku is a good one.
Hmm.
Yeah, take care of yourselves. You have these, all of you, most of you here have oils. You have these things, and maybe you just don't reach for them as often as you should, but reach for them, use them. Yes, wild orange is good too, especially to like help you to uplift you, right? If you
Yeah.
need to, if you're trying to shift it. So use your oils, share them with others, right? And just be there to support each other. We all have to just be there to support each other in whatever way that we know how, because
Yeah. And when you need help, contact your resources.
yes, reach out and reach out. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Next week, we talk about what we'll be talking about next week, friend.
I forgot. I was
Okay,
focused
I'm
on
a,
today. We could post it, but it'll be here. We'll be here some next week.
we'll be here. I'm going to tell y'all real quick so you know what we're talking about next week. It is going to be natural supplements for energy and vitality. Who doesn't need a little more energy and vitality? So join
Mm.
us, same time, same place, y'all. Keep us accountable. All right. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. Ah, all right. I don't know. Do we want to take a couple questions on bye Facebook? Want to take a couple questions on